My son brought me his mud-covered boy and asked me to lie about his missing wife. Part 1. At 3:07 in the morning, my son placed his 7-year-old boy on my kitchen floor about his missing wife. If anyone asks, Ryan said, dropping Claire's navy suitcase beside the table. You say she brought Ben here and ran off with another man. I stared at him. Ben stood beneath the kitchen light in soaked pajamas, trembling so hard his teeth clicked. Wet leaves clung to his sleeves. Mud covered one yellow sneaker. His other shoe was gone. That foot wore only a wet white sock, stained red at the heel. Where is Claire? I asked. Ryan dragged a hand through his hair. There was mud on his jeans and a fresh cut across his cheek. She left. Where? I don't know. You have her suitcase. She threw it at me before she walked away. Ben looked at the suitcase and shook his head. It was the smallest movement, but Ryan saw it. He's confused. He's exhausted. I crouched beside my grandson. Are you hurt, sweetheart? Ryan stepped between us. Mom, I need you to listen. Claire has been threatening to leave for months. Tonight, she finally did it. She abandoned Ben with one shoe. He lost it. Then why is there glass in his clothes? Ryan stopped. Tiny pieces glittered against the mud near Ben's knee. For 27 years, I had delivered mail along the rural roads outside our town. I knew what roadside mud looked like. I knew what shattered safety glass looked like. And I knew when someone was inventing an answer while speaking. Ryan's voice hardened. You always do this. You ask questions when I need you to help me. He had been asking me to help him since he was a boy. Help explain the broken window. Help cover the late payment. Help smooth things over after he frightened a girlfriend or screamed at a boss. After my husband died, Ryan was the only child I had left. I had spent years telling myself his anger came from fear and that, beneath it, he was still a good man. Now he looked at me with the same certainty he had always carried. His mother would protect him. His mother would make the consequences disappear. Say it, he demanded. Say Claire left Ben. I pulled my grandson behind me. No. Ryan's face changed. I wrapped a blanket around Ben and placed paper and crayons in front of him. Can you draw where the mud came from? Stop questioning him, Ryan snapped. Ben picked up a black crayon. First, he drew a curved road, then a car below it. He shaded the car so hard the paper nearly tore. Beside the road, he drew a gray guardrail with a jagged gap in the middle. My stomach tightened. Where was Mommy? I asked. Ben pointed to the car beneath the road. She couldn't get out. Ryan reached for the picture. I caught his wrist. He doesn't know what he's drawing, Ryan said. Ben looked up at him. You pulled me out. I reached for my phone. Ryan grabbed my arm. Don't call anyone yet. His fingers tightened, then released. Mom, he said, his voice dropping. You don't understand what this could do to me. Not what it could do to Claire. Not what it had already done to Ben. To him, I dialed Joe Yao. Ryan grabbed his keys. Come on, Ben. My grandson clutched the front of my robe. He stays here, I said. He's my son, and he's terrified of you. Ryan seized Ben's arm. I stepped between them. Then Ben whispered the words that turned my fear into something colder. Mommy was still calling my name when Daddy drove away. PART2. The 911 dispatcher heard him. Deputies arrived within minutes and separated Ryan from us. He immediately changed his story again, insisting Claire had climbed from the wreck and deliberately disappeared. But Ben remembered things Ryan could not explain. A red mailbox standing on a stone pillar. A broken guardrail. A church bell chiming 3 times in the darkness. I had driven those rural roads for nearly 3 decades. There was only one place I knew where all 3 details came together. A sharp curve on Bellwether Road near St. Luke's Church. Search crews were sent there. They found fresh tire marks near the damaged rail. Then they spotted Claire's car at the bottom of the embankment. Ben's missing yellow sneaker lay near the road. The driver's door was crushed against the earth. The passenger door stood open, but Claire was not inside. Ryan heard the report and shouted that it proved she had run away. Then a rescuer found a long trail through the wet grass, leading from the open door toward a concrete drainage culvert. There was blood along the path, and whatever had made those marks had been dragging itself away from the wreck. Part 3. Deputy Ortiz lifted her radio. Follow the drainage line east. Check the culvert. Room that Claire had probably crawled away on purpose. But no one answered him. Ben sat on my lap with the blanket pulled to his chin. Every time the radio crackled, his fingers tightened around mine. 5 minutes passed, then 7. In my head I could see Bellwether Road exactly as it had looked during my mail route, the steep bank, the wet grass, and the concrete channel hidden below the trees. If Claire had escaped the car with an injured leg, she would not have been able to climb back to the road, but she might have crawled toward shelter. Ortiz's radio came alive. Female located. Alive. My knees nearly gave way. They found Claire curled inside the drainage culvert, almost 60 yards from the wreck. Her leg was badly injured, her clothes were soaked, and she was suffering from hypothermia. She had forced herself through the passenger door after smelling gasoline. Then she dragged her body through the wet grass, trying to get out of the wind. Even barely conscious, she kept asking for Ben. I pressed my face into my grandson's hair. They found your mommy. Ben began to sob against my chest. At the hospital, Claire looked almost colorless beneath the lights. Dried blood marked one side of her face, and machines surrounded her bed. Ben froze in the doorway. Mommy. Claire opened her eyes. The moment she saw him, the fear in her face broke. He climbed carefully onto the edge of the bed. I'm sorry. Daddy made me go. Claire lifted one shaking hand toward him. You didn't leave me. You were taken. None of this was your fault. Then she looked at me and asked the question that made my shame settle deeper. Did he leave Ben too? Part 4. Ben is safe, I told her, and he's going to stay safe. Claire closed her eyes, and tears slipped silently into her hair. Later that morning, after the doctors stabilized her, an investigator asked if she could explain what had happened. Claire asked me to remain in the room. She had packed the Navy suitcase to take Ben to her sister's house. She was not running away with another man. She was trying to get her child somewhere Ryan could not frighten him. Ryan discovered the plan and followed her in his pickup. He called again and again, shouting that she had no right to take his son. On Bellwether Road, he drove close behind her, then pulled alongside near the curve. When Claire refused to stop, Ryan moved into her lane. She swerved. Her tires left the pavement, and the car crashed through the weakened section of guardrail. Ryan climbed down the embankment and pulled Ben from the back seat. Claire was trapped but conscious, and she begged him to call 911. Instead, Ryan looked at the damage on his truck and said, I can't let them see this. He took Ben, removed the suitcase from Claire's damaged trunk, and drove away while she was still calling their son's name. Investigators later found Claire's phone under the passenger seat. Her messages showed she was heading to her sister's home, and that Ryan had been following her. The marks on his pickup matched debris near the guardrail, but the investigators still needed to know what happened after. Ryan left Claire beneath that road, so I told her everything. The missing shoe, the mud, the glass, the changing stories, and the way Ryan tried to pull Ben out of my house after I called 911. Then she asked me to repeat his exact words from 307 that morning. If anyone asks, I said. He wanted me to say Claire left Ben and ran away with another man. The investigator placed a written statement in front of me. My hand shook when she offered me the pen, not because I doubted the truth, but because I knew exactly whose life my signature would change. Part 5. I signed the statement. A few minutes later, Ryan asked to speak with me before giving his formal account. We met in a small consultation room near Claire's hospital unit. With an investigator beside the door, Ryan looked pale and exhausted. For one foolish second, I saw the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Then he said, You can still fix this. Claire almost died, I told him. He said it had been an accident. I said, leaving her there was not. Ryan swallowed. I had been. I panicked. I reminded him that he had driven past houses, a fire station, and every chance to call for help before bringing Ben to me. She was taking my son, he said. She was taking him somewhere safe, I answered. You don't know what our marriage was like? No, I said, because every time she tried to tell me, I explained you for her. His eyes hardened. If you sign that statement, they'll use it against me. I held his gaze. I already signed it. The silence between us felt like something tearing. I'm your son, he said. A mother is supposed to protect her child. He knew exactly where to place those words. I thought of every debt had paid, every apology had softened, and every frightened look I had explained away. Then I pictured Claire dragging herself through wet grass while calling Ben's name. Pictured my grandson standing in my kitchen with one yellow shoe. I love you, I said. I will not lie for you. Ryan stared at me as if I had become a stranger. You chose her over me. I shook my head. No, I chose the people you left with no choice. He looked toward the investigator, waiting for someone to rescue him from the consequences. She did not. Neither did I. But as I walked back toward Claire's room, I knew telling the truth would not magically repair what my silence had helped damage for years. Part 6. The months after the crash were not clean or easy. Ryan faced charges connected to the collision, leaving the scene and abandoning Claire while she was injured. A court order kept him away from Claire and Ben while the case moved forward. Some relatives said I had betrayed my own blood. One cousin told me a mother should stand beside her son no matter what. I asked whether Claire's mother was supposed to stand beside her daughter. He had no answer. Claire spent weeks learning to walk without crutches, while Ben began seeing a child therapist. For a while, he refused to ride near guardrails. Church bells woke him from sleep, and he checked both shoes before leaving any room. Claire did not forgive me simply because I called 911. She should not have. One afternoon, I sat across from her at her sister's kitchen table and apologized without asking her to comfort me. I called Ryan's anger stress, I said. I called your silence distance. I kept choosing the explanation that hurt me least. Claire looked down at her hands. You saved me that night, answered. I should have believed you before you needed saving. She did not tell me everything was all right. Instead, she said, I don't know what our relationship will be. I understand. But Ben loves you, she said. I love him, answered. Claire nodded. Then we start with what makes him feel safe. So we did. I visited when Claire invited me, left when she needed space, and stopped asking her for news about Ryan. 3 months after the crash, I stood on her sister's porch holding a pan of lasagna. Ben ran toward the door wearing 2 new bright yellow sneakers. Halfway across the hall, he stopped, looked down, and checked that both laces were tied. Then he reached back and took his mother's hand. Claire walked slowly, but she walked without crutches. I stayed outside the doorway and waited. At last, Claire opened it wider. You can come in, Evelyn. Ben pulled me across the threshold not because I was Ryan's mother, and not because blood entitled me to a place beside them. He pulled me inside because on the night my son asked me to sacrifice an innocent woman for him, Elle had finally learned what a mother was supposed to protect.